hung out like live bait. That's how Sir Cliff Richard described his experience of almost 2 years under suspicion of historical sexual abuse. Well, this week, the Crown Prosecution Service announced that he would face no further action over the accusations due to a lack of evidence. Despite this, Sir Cliff is worried that his reputation and those of other people who've been through similar experiences could be tarnished forever. Should we have ever been aware of the allegations? Well, Sir Cliff issued a statement, and in it he said, other than in exceptional cases, people who are facing allegations should never be named publicly until charged. Is he right? Or, despite the traumatic experience for the accused, is naming them a necessary part of our justice system? So our next question, should those accused of sex crimes be named? What are your thoughts? Do email us, text us, call or use social media to get in touch. We're joined now also by Nick Freeman, an author and celebrity lawyer who campaigns for anonymity for accused people. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you.
Peter, let me start with you. Any sympathy do you have for Sir Cliff in the public nature of these accusations?
Immense sympathy. What is happening at the moment is a sustained attack on the presumption of innocence. People should be tried in court before an independent jury, and the Crown should have to prove the case against them. They should not have to prove themselves innocent. And as long as that law exists, as long as that rule exists, we're a free people in a free country. If it's got rid of, we cease to be free. And what's happening at the moment is the police are becoming far too powerful, the Crown Prosecution Service are becoming far too powerful, and trials are conducted without a presumption of innocence in the public domain long before they reach court. And this is a grave danger, and anybody who's accused under these circumstances usually has their life ruined, even if after long, long struggles they find themselves not proven guilty.
Nick, the justice system in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty, so what's the harm in naming the accused?
Well, the complainant in sexual cases unusually has special protection. And if the complainant has special protection, I would say that that is because of the unique stigma that's associated with this area. The complainant needs special protection, should be looked after very well, and so should the defendant. And what I would propose is a system whereby anybody who is accused of a sexual allegation is granted blanket anonymity, not as Sir Cliff says until charged, but actually until convicted. But I would always leave the door open on every case so that the lawyer, the prosecution, the police could go to a judge and say, look, we believe it would be in the public interest, for example, we feel we're dealing with a serial offender, that anonymity should be lifted so that other people could be encouraged to come forward. And I think that would strike the balance that is needed.
Joan, in a case of an accuser and the accused, should they be treated the same?
No, they shouldn't. And there is never any context in these discussions. It's always about a few men who have had a very unpleasant experience, contributed to, I have to say, by the way in which the police sometimes handle these cases and the popular press, which is an argument why we should have the second part of the Leveson inquiry to look at that relationship. But the important context here is that the problem with rape, sexual abuse, child sexual abuse in this country is the vast number of perpetrators who get away with it. I've chaired the Mayor of London's Violence Against Women and Girls Board for the last 3 years, and I see the data from the Metropolitan Police. Last year, 5,500 complaints of rape were recorded by the Metropolitan Police. Senior officers say that probably represents, at best, 1 in 5. Now, that means that probably there's more like 30,000 rapes just in London.
This is your estimate?
No, it's what the police are saying, that figure only represents 1 in 5.
But so it is an estimate, it's not a fact.
But it's actually supported by the women who run rape crisis lines and refuges, who find that the vast majority of women who come to them for help have not actually gone to the police. And the reason they don't go to the police is that they're afraid they won't be believed, because they don't understand that rape and child sexual abuse are serial crimes. So if you have this blanket ban, what you will have is one person probably facing the ordeal of giving evidence in a trial and probably not being believed by the jury. So the point of what's being proposed, the anonymity for defendants, is actually an obstruction, a further obstruction to justice, because it's when someone is actually arrested or charged, that's when other people come forward. And we can see from last week, as well as Sir Cliff Richard, we saw the case of Clement Freud, who even his wife has accepted that he probably was an abuser. He got away with it for years.
90% of cases of sexual assault involve people who actually know each other.
Okay? That's not quite right.
Well, we can argue with statistics, but surely the point is we don't want to traduce innocent reputations. And what I'm proposing is a system which protects what you're suggesting, so that people who are serial offenders, the people who the police, prosecution believe are serial offenders, that the defendants are named. As in Jimmy Savile, Stuart Hall, the sort of people we're talking about. But when you're dealing with the sort of cases that we've heard about Sir Cliff, there was no suggestion ever he was a serial offender or any offender at all. He wasn't even interviewed or he wasn't even arrested. Why shouldn't he be afforded protection? Where is the justice? That stigma will never leave him
Where
for
is
the
the
rest of his
justice
life.
for the thousands of women who are raped and abused in this country and
Indeed.
will never see
Donna,
their attackers brought to trial?
Yeah. Donna, let me ask you, Sir Cliff Richard used the phrase hung out like live
Yeah.
bait. The impact this has on public figures, celebrities, is that different?
Absolutely, and particularly now, today, with social media amplifying any rumours or accusations, however unfounded, to your reputation, that never goes away. It continues to rumble on Twitter and Facebook, and people will claim that there's no smoke without fire. Unfortunately, Joe, there are people that will come forward and make false accusations. That kind of muddies the water. People who want to do it for monetary reasons, who are delusional, and this affects people. Look at Paul Gamacini. He was never charged. It cost him £200,000 in legal fees and lost work, and he was never accused or charged. Neither was Cliff Richard, and yet the damage to their reputation.
And they can't recover that money
No,
either.
you can't.
No, you can't recover
Joan,
it.
let me give you a right to reply.
Why do we immediately go to this question of false complaints in rape?
Because it happens.
Because the Director of Public Prosecutions, when Keir Starmer was doing that job, actually commissioned research which showed that that is very rare. There are all kinds of crimes, car crime, people reporting their cars stolen when they haven't been, insurance fraud. Why do we always assume that women and children
No, we
are
don't.
liars?
But if it can happen at all, then the innocent have got to stay innocent till they're proven guilty.
I would like to just clear up. You mentioned Keir Starmer when he was Director of Public Prosecutions. Home Office research suggests that 3% of allegations are false. So
But how can-
much
There's
smaller, much
there's
smaller
only one
number
place
than
where we can
considered.
determine in our justice system whether an allegation is proven or not. And it's proven that we're talking about, not whether we ourselves think it's false or true, but whether it is proven beyond reasonable doubt before an independent jury in court. That is the place where it has to
And
be
then you
proved.
name the defendants.
And
anyone who's
and
convicted,
court-
you name. And they have everything that follows from that conviction. And therefore we're upholding the presumption of innocence.
But
the way we're going at the moment is the presumption of innocence is eroded.
But also there's a point about very passive and lazy policing, that they can name somebody, leak rumours to the press, and continue to get people to rebail themselves in a hope that somebody will come forward, when I think the police should be doing more work to actually ensure the original conviction, instead of getting other people to come in to try and back it
The
up.
purpose of
Peter.
prosecution is not to advertise that you're investigating somebody.
Exactly.
The purpose of prosecution is to prosecute an alleged crime, and if the person who's accused of it is found guilty, to punish him or her. Now, it's not an advertising campaign to get more accusers. If more in any case, the trial should be the moment where it is in public, where the trial, which is conducted under strict rules of impartiality and fairness, is the place where the allegations should be made public and people can come forward then. There's no need to advertise it before.
But all of these are criticisms of process and not of the actual principles behind it. So yes, the police are too slow quite often to investigate these complaints, particularly historical ones which have their own difficulties. The press behaves very, very badly. But the point that I'm making is that a single complainant alleging rape or sexual abuse, it may not even get to the person being charged, because there's nobody, if it's particularly in a historical case where there's no physical evidence to corroborate, it's only when other people come forward that you will actually get charges laid in the first place.
Under what I'm suggesting, that would happen. Because the investigating officers would say, look, we think there is more to this than meets the eye. We're going to a judge, we're going to make an application. Your situation will be catered for.
And that would happen in the majority of those cases.
Well, how would it help anybody to make it easier to find innocent people guilty? What would possibly be helped by that?
Peter,
what good would that do to your cause or to any cause?
Hundreds of thousands of children are sexually abused in this country. Thousands of women are raped. Thousands of teenagers are raped. Where is your concern for them? You're very worried about the small.
I have a very great concern.
You're very worried about the small number of celebrity defendants.
I have a concern for liberty, for the limited powers of the state, for the state not being able to put people in prison because it feels like it, but having to prove its case. That is what happens once you undermine the presumption of innocence, which your campaign is doing. The fact that I think that doesn't mean I'm any less concerned than you about the victims of genuine crime.
Peter, if the accuser is a child, should he or she be named?
Oh, I think everybody should be named in trials. I think secrecy in trials is always damaging. Justice in secret is justice denied.
Well, if the defendant is a child, a youth, 17 and under, if the trial is going to take place in the youth court, that child cannot be named. If the child is going to be tried in the magistrates or Crown Court, then the judge has a discretion that the identity should be withheld.
Donna, we were talking about the media, or Joan, you were mentioning the media. How do you think the media, or does it not honour the idea of the presumption of innocence?
No, not if it makes a good story. I think that, and I think celebrities have kind of highlighted this, that if a name is leaked by the police, in this case to the media, and they run with that, even when that person is later not charged, not actually arrested, it never really goes away. The reputation is damaged, and I don't know how much time it would take to heal that. And I think Cliff has got a right to feel aggrieved.
Let's talk to Tommy. Tommy, lots of people reacting to this subject in light of Sir Cliff's comments. What are you hearing?
We've had a lot of messages. Joan may not like to hear this, but the overwhelming majority of people are saying that Cliff Richard should not have been named. Lee, for example, says, we're all innocent until proven guilty. The problem is an ignorant and childish people who frequently replace that maxim with no smoke without fire. Jane says, no, he should not have been named. Also, there should be a time limit of 20 years for bringing charges. Eugene says Cliff has been wrongly pilloried. This treatment of him has been unconscionable, to say the least. Robert says there is a definite guilty until proven innocent attitude by the tabloid press, especially when it comes to the famous. And Mark says, no, again, he should not have been named until found guilty, as a stigma will always be there. He won't ever shake it off, which is what our lawyer was saying.
Absolutely, yes. Nick was saying that. Joan, I mean, lots of people disagreeing with you here.
Yes, but lots of people can disagree, but none of them is addressing the context that I'm talking about. There are thousands of people in this country. I mean, to say that you shouldn't be able to bring charges after 20 years. Jimmy Savile was offending 40 and 50 years ago. We can't charge him because he's dead, but some of these cases, these historical cases, were 30 or 40 years ago. Those people are still entitled to redress, even if you were assaulted 40 years ago.
There's an old rule: hard cases make bad law, and it's true. You can't necessarily. Well, you can't necessarily say that because it might mean somebody escapes prosecution, you should have a bad law, which means other people are persecuted needlessly and have their lives ruined on flimsy charges of which there is very slender evidence.
We have a very robust prosecution system in place now. The police are specially trained to look after complainants. They're dealt with very sympathetically at court. There's screens. There's all sorts of provisions to look after their welfare. There's absolutely nothing to look after the welfare of a falsely accused defendant.
We could talk about this for a lot longer, I'm sure, but we're going to wrap up this discussion for the moment. Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments on that too. Do keep them coming in. Now, after 6 months in orbit, British astronaut Tim Peake returned to Earth yesterday. During that time, he has completed, get this, more than 2,700 orbits. He's covered a distance of more than 114 million kilometres. Now, he's also ignited interest in space exploration. All this week, a parliamentary committee has been calling for the creation of a UK space programme. And it's not rocket science knowing that that could be an expensive business. So who did we launch off to probe whether people think spending on more space exploration is worthwhile? Tommy, of course. Ground control to Major Tom.
Forget international space travel, it's inter-studio travel as I find myself here at the Science Museum in London as we're all getting quite excited about the return of Tim Peake.
Well, now just coming through the clouds, you see that they're just gliding down underneath that parachute.
Helen Sharman is the first British astronaut that we've ever had. How exciting is it to watch Tim landing here for you?
It's so great. I mean, we're relieved, to be quite honest, that everything's happened fine, you know, that he's safe and he was smiling and clearly he is well.
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, very good.
We're seeing a lot of youngsters here. Why is this so important for the next generation?
This is really pushing forward humanity's boundaries. This is making sure that we are thinking about not just life on Earth. We're learning so much about working internationally, collaborating and improving everybody's lives in the future. And just being part of that exciting venture, hugely inspirational for any country that's involved in it.
Obviously, everyone's super enthusiastic about space travel here, but I'm going to boldly go out into the streets to see what regular folk think. Why is it so important that we explore the universe to you?
I'm not sure if it's really so important to explore it. I think we should spend more money to explore here and how we live here on the Earth.
We've got to think to the future. We can't just be earthbound. We've just got to think that that's the next frontier.
Is that money well spent?
No, not really.
Why?
Why? Because it could be spent on other things, like homeless people and getting people jobs and things like that.
Out of space, there's a whole load of medical discoveries being made right now that might mean that somebody down here who's suffering can be cured.
Do you agree with your friend?
Yeah, I think it could be spent more for the NHS, really, because it's at crisis point at the moment.
The money going to space could be put into education and maybe better in the health service. But it's one of those things, do we sacrifice the future, which is important for their generation, or do we concentrate on the present?
Now, there's talk off the back of that mission that we have our own national space programme.
Well, I think it's necessary you've got some individual programme going, because otherwise you're not going to attract the young to come forward.
Britain, we're meant to be a superpower. I mean, we're talking about exiting the EU and being our own big country, and it's something that we should definitely have a hand in.
If we get angry, we can travel to your planet and take over your planet.
We don't want that. We don't want you to do that.
So stop investing your money into travel space.
Okay, it's a warning. It's a warning to all of us.
Yeah.
We can't. We're not.
Exactly. This is my advice to you.
Too much.
I like Tommy's new friend, Tommy Sandu, our very own rocket man at London Science Museum. So our final question today, should we be spending more money on space? Joining the panel now is Sue Nelson, a journalist and co-founder of the Space Boffins podcast, and the space scientist is with us as well, Monica Grady. Lots of enthusiasm that has been created around Tim. Also some misgivings, though, Monica, about the amount of money that's being spent. We're in a time of austerity. Is it justified?
It is justified. I can understand why people do have misgivings, though. But when you see the benefit from Tim's programme, the inspirational nature of what he's achieved and what he's doing, and how our industry needs more scientists, technologists, engineers and mathematicians, we've got to have some way of inspiring students at school to study those subjects. And Tim Peake has been an absolutely magnificent role model.
And the yields that come from this, Donna, I mean, they're huge, the dividends. I mean, so the science industry would argue.
But I think we've done it now. We've put a British astronaut in space, and the dividends from that...
Helen Sharman was
it'll roll on and on. I mean, what he's done, and, you know, all power to him. I'm very glad he's done it, and we'll get lots of kind of dividends from the experiments he's done, etc. But for us to have our own space program, we're not in the league of China, Russia.
We already have
and I think the problem is that it's a luxury item in a nation where we have got problems at home, great problems at home, to do with housing, to do with our national health system, which is crumbling. I would like to see, and education, I'd like to see those issues addressed first before we start thinking further.
So you're saying this should be the end of it?
I think we should, you know, maybe stay on the fringes of it and contribute, you know, to the agency if we can, but not to create our own space program. Not now. Not
Sue,
sorry, George just dropped on the floor, because I also saw in that report that you had your reporter saying, do you think we should have our own national agency? We have the UK Space Agency. The UK Space Agency puts money into the European Space Agency. So we're a big donator of funds, which when we get more than that back in terms of the benefits. And you've also got to think that during the recession, the UK space industry was one of the few industries that actually its profits went up, its turnover increased, and it's got this aim to be part of make £40 billion turnover by 2030. And I've no doubt it's going to do it, because it supplies jobs all over the country. There are companies. There's a company in Britain that actually its lithium-ion batteries could well have been in Tim Peake's backpack when he was doing a spacewalk, because that's what they provide. So we make an awful lot for the world, actually, in Britain.
So it's good for the economy. What are the benefits?
Well, it may be, but I think that's just a reflection on how bad the rest of the economy is. If we have a terrible economy, we hardly make anything. We're tremendously in debt. We have a catastrophic current account balance,
yet here's an industry that's making profits.
Well, yes, but so what? It's delusional to imagine that we're a country which can engage in space exploration, which is in any case a byproduct of ballistic missile research. Tim Peake was put up into space by the Russians, for goodness sake, using rockets designed in the 1950s. But it's not the point. The point is we have forgotten how to get a train from Brighton to London. So how on earth should we be considering putting people in space if we can't get trains from Brighton to London? If we've got money to spend it on reconstructing our secondary education system, bringing back selective secondary state education and grammar schools, and then we might have people who were capable of running
well,
a space program.
Sue said her jaw was dropping to the floor. Monica, I've heard gasps from you.
Any minute now, I'm going to explode.
Please don't. But please give us your opinion.
The UK has a very, very vibrant space industry economy, and Peter's just said we don't make anything. That is nonsense. Our space economy makes things. It makes components. We have a really, really vibrant, profitable company down in the south which makes satellites. It's a world leader, world class. It makes things for NASA. When you have companies like that, they employ people. Those people then go out and buy things. They have holidays, they buy cars. They're making things. There's a component industry. There's HR companies, there's IT that service those other companies. For every pound that we pay into the European Space Agency, we get £9 back into our economy.
That's a difficult statistic to bat against, isn't it, Peter?
I don't mind. It's not a matter of whether it brings in money. I think it's a
I would
wrong.
have thought it was for the
economy.
economy.
It's not. This is your argument. I just think it's a wrong target for our money. I think if we've got money to spend, we've got other things we can spend it on better. I would like to renationalise the railways and rebuild them, a thing which we invented and gave to the world, and where we now barely make any components, and which we badly need, and we cannot at the moment. You go down to Brighton on a weekday morning and ask the commuters,
Peter,
they can't even get to London.
Peter, that's
how you can possibly tell? It's not. How you can possibly tell them that it's important?
Well, we're talking about
to be
space
spending money on
exploration.
space exploration.
You really
do not.
Yes, we will get your say. You will get your say. I promise. But Peter, you see absolutely no benefit to space exploration.
I think it's well, maybe so. There are some benefits from everything. I just think if you're trying to work out, if you're a cash-strapped, broke country on the edge of bankruptcy, if you're trying to work out how to spend money, space seems to me to come to the back.
Sue.
Yeah, OK, I can completely bat that off. Space is not just about putting somebody on the International Space Station. It's about the mobile phone in your pocket. It's about disaster monitoring after tsunamis or crop failures. It's about telecommunications. It's about live broadcasts. It's about sporting events. Space does all these things.
It's monitoring the sporting events, but other people.
It's monitoring the ice caps for climate change. So you cannot just say space is that one thing. We live with space.
It's modelling people flow. It's doing all sorts of things. Space starts in low Earth orbit with all these satellites. We have a vibrant industry building those satellites, which then do the telecommunications. They monitor traffic flow. They monitor the railways. They monitor everything. If only we could have a day when all the satellites were switched off, we would realise absolutely how essential
Do we want to be
space
overly
was.
monitored?
Donna, has any of this changed your mind? The passion you're feeling here from
I
Sue
hear
and
what
Monica?
they're saying, and it is a specialised industry, but for me, for Great Britain, I think it's a luxury item right now at this point in time, and I think the bigger countries with the bigger budgets, should be doing the work, and we shouldn't be trying to compete at that level. We don't have the budget.
I mean, should Iceland have a space program? And if not, why not?
That's their decision.
Because they're
a
not
lot
in the
of
league.
emerging countries actually
They're not
are
in the
having a
league.
space program. Actually, lots in Africa, for example.
Nigeria has a
because of
space
that.
program.
Do you think that's right?
Of course
Given the
it's
state
right.
of Nigeria, you think it's right?
Nigeria,
Space exploration?
India creates jobs, inspires the youth. It's high-tech. We are a high-tech company, and to say that we can't afford it, it's an international partnership.
OK. Let's calm down, shall we? Let's go to our resident spaceman, shall we? Let's go to Tommy. He's back down to
I feel like I
earth.
should be walking in space. No,
Yeah, it's a good impression. What are people saying?
People at home very much talking how you guys are talking here in the studio. Some of you saying that it helps our economy, and others saying that it's just simply too costly to justify. Let's start with Answers in Books, who says the NASA Apollo missions generated $14 for every $1 spent, similar to what was said. Space is good for the economy. Profits could fund good causes. Angie says, as much as I admire him, we need to sort out the world before we go spending money on things like this. Robert says, yes, it's justified as long as we remain sensible with it. This sort of stuff is profoundly inspiring. We can feel that, everyone getting behind it. Liam says, no, we should not spend any money to go to space when there are homeless people on the streets and a housing crisis. Money should be better spent. And finally, John says, That depends on what was gained by this mission in the first place. What info did Tim Peake bring back that we didn't already have? I think he wants to see a little Martian or something.
A Martian. He might have one in his pocket. You never know. I mean, he did lots of stuff inspiring children and doing a lot of work on the International Space Station as well. Donna, what do you think of Tim Peake? Regardless of what you think of the money spent,
Wonderful.
Tim Peake and what he's done.
A huge example of courage and optimism and open-mindedness. And yes, he has inspired lots of children. And I hope they all do go into science. And I hope at some point in the future we are in a better position to think about tackling a national space program.
Peter, did he ever raise a smile?
Well, yes, but it's a luxury thing. It's not. Who can not be glad for him and take pleasure in what he did? But it just simply doesn't change the fact that we are not in the league of countries which is capable of maintaining a space.
How should we take advantage of Tim Peake's appeal? Because he's been on our screens for the last 6 months and before. He's popular. His name rolls off our tongues.
Well, taking advantage, that's already started. It's happened before his mission with various programmes in school. It's happened during his mission, and it will carry on after with experiments, science experiments that schools around the UK have been involved in. There's also the inspirational aspect. I mean, there is a whole generation of scientists probably our age, Monica, who were inspired by the Apollo moon landings. So you will probably find that the benefits of this in terms of on a personal level, let alone the science and looking at the future long-haul travel for space, it's starting now. In 20 years' time you'll see it, or 10 years' time, with the number of people who want to study science or maths or engineering.
Monica, one word to describe Tim Peake.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Brilliant. That was 2, but I'll forgive you. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's end with a smile. And obviously, of course, thanks to our spaceman, Tommy. Thanks very much. That's it for us this morning. Thanks to our guests. Thanks to you at home for joining the discussions too. We're not on next week because of coverage of the aftermath of the EU referendum. So hopefully you'll join me in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, do have a lovely day. Bye-bye.